passion and my mission to help you unleash your greatness within. My heart goes out to the underdogs that's on their way. If you think you can go from good to great, okay, let's motivate. Greatnesswithin.com. TJ Hoisington. Greatnesswithin.com.
Jeremy, welcome to the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast.
Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. What a pleasure it is. Your publicist sent some things over to me I thought were powerful. You've got this new book coming out. Let me turn it. Wait, I got it right? No, I have it upside down. Right there and right here. So I'm going to have you explain this in a second. But I thought one of the first things we should do is have you just introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah. So my name is Jeremy, and I guess the thing today would be that I run Trend Hunter, which is the world's largest trend and innovation platform, and a conference series called Future Festival. But the truth, the fun story, the backstory, which is a little more exciting, is that I was actually just someone always trying to figure out what I should do in life. What's my entrepreneurial adventure or idea? And so I stumbled around looking for that idea forever, and eventually I coded up Trend Hunter in, I guess, 2005, before YouTube, before Facebook, because I wanted to make a place where people could share business ideas. And I thought maybe some Trend Hunter in Europe or a Trend Hunter in Asia will submit the little idea that would inspire me. And what I didn't expect is that the views would go from thousands to millions to billions of views, and sort of set me on a new course where now my life mission is to help other people find their ideas and hopefully find those ideas faster.
No, that's really cool. And it's really amazing kind of what you uncovered. I was going through your book. Explain, first of all, the feel of the book is really cool, but you have a lot of stuff in here and it's divided into half. So give us a quick overview of your new book.
Sure. So the main part is called Create the Future: Tactics for Disruptive Thinking. And the general premise is that you have so much opportunity within your grasp, but there are things that block us and trap us into repeating the decisions of the past and keeping us caught in the path that we're already on. And I've had the opportunity to work with about 700 brands, billionaires, CEOs now, who I've learned a lot from. And along the way, what I've learned is that your success is the biggest impediment often to showing you what you're truly potential of. When things are going well, it's just so easy to get caught in a groove. So I wanted to take a lot of the best practices and lessons I've learned from so many of those high-performance individuals about resetting yourself, thinking disruptively, getting over the neurological traps that block you from just exactly seeing what you could do. And that was the front. But the front's actually kind of a reaction to what the back is. And in the back, the Innovation Handbook is actually a total rewrite of a book that I wrote in 2008 called Exploiting Chaos. And Exploiting Chaos was about how people get intimidated by chaos and change, and yet chaos creates opportunity. And I'd written it right before the world went chaotic. And so that was my big break personally, in that I started getting all these calls from Fortune 500 CEOs when the world got really chaotic. You help one, you get help another, and pretty soon it's 10, and then 50, and then 100. And so my whole story began in a way from writing this book and becoming the chaos guy. And if I was to look back at it, we're still in a period of chaos, more chaos, but the part that I felt was missing would be a little bit more about just change and disruptive thinking, which is why I rewrote the sort of a whole new section for the front, because I feel like until you can get your mindset past the barriers of your current status quo, it's really tough to open your mind up to finding a new idea and your potential.
Yes. That was a fun part of the read that I found, was just the whole kind of personal development side, the belief side, that we set up these blind spots that, I mean, even later on, you talk about, let's see if I can find it really quick. You talk about on page 104, I think it was on page, I'm not exactly sure, but you talk about how we think we know what the customer needs. and you talk about new trends that are coming, and you've got to get outside and question what you already know. Okay.
Yeah, there's an interesting reality where the people who miss out ideas that are sort of the most interesting studies to me would be the people who were the market leader and somehow they missed the idea that was directly in their own market. So how does Kodak invent the digital camera and not do anything with it? How does Smith Corona invent the laptop and grammar checkers and spell checkers and not do anything with it? How is Blockbuster Video a pioneer of online video streaming? And how does BlackBerry and all the other phone makers create what they make, but then not see the potential of the iPhone? And I've gone a little deeper and studied and interviewed all of those people. And what you start to uncover is that when you're an expert in a field, whatever field you're in, when you look at something new in your own field, it'll just seem a little bit more awkward. It just seems like, we tried something like that. This other way is actually still a better way of doing it. And so then what happens is that an outsider can so often see the potential of an idea in your own world more easily than you can. And so the tactics for disruptive thinking around that involve several different techniques for looking at your problem, your world, your scenario from different perspectives in order to actually realize the true potential you have. Because otherwise we have a lot of neuropsychological mechanisms that are made to make us go really fast. And unfortunately, they create actual blind spots, and there's ways to prove it.
Yeah, you actually point that out in the book based on how our brain works, that we get in this pattern of going one direction, one direction, one direction.
Sure.
We become efficient, you say in the book, but because of that, we also create blind spots along the way.
So, I mean, one of my favorite sort of stories, not to nerd it up for everyone too much, I promise I won't lose you if you hang in there for a second, but there's this thing where when you try something new, you fumble around with it and you figure it out, and then you practice it. It could be picking up a tennis racket. It could be, doing whatever you do in your own job. The first time you fumble around and you mess it up, but then pretty soon your brain makes a new neural pathway and it starts to solidify that pathway. It paves it with a little highway of myelin. Now, we're not going to go deep in it. I'm not going to lose you, I promise. But what happens is the more you practice, the more your little highways get paved. And now today, your brain is 40% myelin. And I can prove to you how it works in a way that kind of shocks you and makes you realize how it impacts your change. Is that okay? Should we do it?
Let's do it.
So the first one would be, and this is the only weird part for given, that we're doing a podcast, but cross your arms as fast as you can. Just cross your arms as fast as you can. Easy, right? No big deal. Shake it off, unshake your arm, and then cross your arms as fast as you can the opposite way. Oh. Now, it's just minor, but when you try the opposite way, you kind of mechanically have to think about where your hand goes. Correct. And that's because crossing your arms is something that you've myelinated in your brain in terms of how you do it. You try it the other way, that's not challenging. You can figure it out, but suddenly you have to think through the steps. And if we go even bigger, one step bigger, I have a fun exercise in the book that I love doing, and you could recreate this with your team, your family, but try this one. It's called the Alternative Uses Test from the 1960s. And you go to a group of people and you just say, what can you do with a paperclip? And it's pretty simple. And I've done this more than 100 times in some of my keynotes. And in order, I can predict what an audience will say, almost in order. They'll say, pick a lock, make a weapon, clip paper together. You can make a chain, earrings. You can pop a SIM card out of a phone. You can trade it, you can make art, and then someone in the audience will say, you can pick your teeth with it, and someone will say a Christmas ornament. But point is, an audience, a group, anyone you bring this to will probably get to 10 or 15 ideas. That's the average. But the average kindergarten kids get to 200 ideas. So it's sort of weird, A, that I can predict, but B, that kids can get so many more. And what it is it's how your myelin works. So your brain narrows down your thinking to the things you've done or seen before, and that makes you fast. But it actually weirdly doesn't even show you the other ideas. Yet, if I stop you and you put a little method to it, we could make up almost any method. But if we get you to look at your problem from different perspectives, I could say, okay, what art pieces could you make from a paperclip? What functional technology? And we could get you to increase your ideas. But now we did the arm crossing. We went one up to show you the paperclip, where we lose 95% of our ideas compared to kids. And now you go one level higher and you're in your job and your role and your life. And if you want your inner greatness to be fully unleashed, the reality is that you need to find a way to break out of how your brain and your myelin block you to just thinking about things that are what you're already doing. And the upside is you do have more great ideas within your grasp, but you need certain tactics to unleash your thinking in order to actually see what you're capable of.
Okay, let's see if I found those tactics, because there's a little note I put here. So,
Done.
okay, let's see if I'm right. You correct me. Tactics and methods for dismissible trends, you say. You say, number one, you've got to be humble. Number two, you've got to ask questions. Number three, recognize the power or the blind in power of your own expertise. And number four, take the advice that you give others. Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, I put a lot of workshops in the book too, but then some of the questions I ended each little section with just some simple but hopefully provocative ways for you just to relook at your own world, because you're capable of figuring out what you can actually do. But it's very important to understand how these traps related to your own success actually block you from seeing your full potential. And when someone loses, there's so many stories you'll see where someone loses their job or times are tough, and then they start a new company and they figure out their life and they end up in a better spot. And it's because they were forced by someone else into a situation where they had to sort of relook at their potential. And the difficult part is when things seem to be just sort of doing well and you have a dream or aspiration to do more, but when things are doing well, you have too much of a safety net to start recognizing what you're capable of.
No, so true. And I think everyone listening could understand that. You know, I've been teaching for 20 years on the concept of, and I don't, not from your, probably some of your background, just in general, that I remember in my early years, Les Brown would say, if you're just standing on the highway of success, you're going to get run over. And that I always tell my audiences that change is constant and never ending. It's the constant rapids of change, and learning to embrace that change rather than resist it is going to be more effective for you going forward. So my question for you is, talk about the speed of change. What do you see from your perspective?
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time in our world of futurism trying to help clients very specifically predict where their world is headed. And what's interesting about how our brain works is that we overestimate how much we are capable of doing in the next couple of years, and we underestimate how much technology is going to do. And when you add it all up, we're pretty terrific at predicting next year, actually. And we're pretty terrific at imagining an unbounded future. What's the super future like 10 years out? We can actually describe it. But where we start becoming terrible is 3 to 5 years out, because we don't anticipate how many surprises happen 3 to 5 years out. And now that we're in this world where change is accelerating, that starts becoming a problem. So if I give you a couple stats, in the 1950s, the average lifespan of a Fortune 500 was 75 years. You kind of joined a blue chip company and you're there for life. That's fallen to 15 and it's on its way to 7. If I look at the list of the Fortune 500 companies from the year 2000, which kind of seems like yesterday, but 2000, half of them are gone. More than half of them are gone or displaced.
Yeah.
And so everyone wants innovation to happen. We seem relatively open to change, and yet the most iconic companies, as an example, can't even seem to wither the storm. And I think it's because in school we don't study chaos and disruption and change, and yet these are the factors now that are the most predominant impacting your world. And that's what I think people need to start adding tactics to, not realizing innovation matters, but saying, okay, time for the next step. Let's dive into the tactics that could get you there.
Okay, I agreed. So talk to this for a second. I'm a big believer that some of your greatest ideas inside of an organization are going to come from many of your frontline workers, or many of those people out on the floor or in the field that are working, you know, one-on-one with customers or seeing specific issues that keep, coming up. What I have found is oftentimes leaders will shut some of those ideas down, right? Those solutions down. And what it leads these people to do is to leave disgruntled or frustrated or what have you. As you've worked with all these companies and many of these leaders who are forward thinkers, have you seen that they are pretty open to new ideas that have helped kind of maneuver their company to stay competitive?
So I think that we're entering a period where people have seen enough examples of disruption that it's starting to seem real, but these traps of success impact a senior leader even more. So if I'm a CEO of a certain age, I probably honed my management tactics in the 80s or 90s, and then in the 2000s started really moving up. And now in 2010, 2020, you've been rewarded for all the times that you've said no, not the times that you've actually said yes. And the metaphor I like to use about the traps of success would be that 1,000,000 years ago, we were all hunters with a hunter instinct, eat or be eaten, adapt or die. And we all still have those hunter instincts in us. But 10,000 years ago, people planted the first seeds. And when they did around the world, we started to flourish and farming helped us grow. Got it. But now, after 10,000 years of evolution as farmers, we're pre-wired with a series of 3 traps in particular that cause us to repeat whatever led to last year's harvest. So the more senior you are, the more you must recognize the issue is that your discipline, your desire for consistency, your good traits about maintaining what has worked so well also cause you to become complacent, protective, and too dismissive of new ideas. And so there's ways around it. Actually, that's one of the key things my company tries to study in leaders. We've measured about 35,000 in leaders in coming up with this book. But that's one of the key things is the hunter versus farmer and how we have both sides in all of us. But the more senior evolved you are, the more successful your company, the more those farmer traps kick in because you just want to protect what's there. And so you stop wanting to listen to the front lines, as you put it, and all those signals are the people that are actually showing you that change is happening and imminent.
Love it. That's really good. You know, I always say that the easier it is to be good, the more difficult it is to be great. And it's because of this. It seems like you're bringing this up. The last couple podcasts, success interviews that I've done have brought it up. This place of complacency.
Yeah.
It's easy to be good. I've gotten comfortable at this level. We're getting results. We're profitable. But the great companies, the ones I get to work for, it just seems like, are those that are forward thinkers. They realize that you don't need to be sick to get better. And I felt like you wrote essentially about that much in this book, just that you don't have to be sick to get better. But if you're going to stay ahead, if you're going to stay competitive, you got to start thinking and being open to new ideas.
So I've been lucky enough to have a chance to work now with 700 brands, billionaires, CEOs, NASA, and I've gotten a lot of really neat insight and opportunity from that. But I've also learned that there are 3 categories I believe that everyone puts themselves in. Either you're paranoid and you're number 1 in the world like a Google and you'll try anything because you think someone else is going to get you, or you think you're doing well, or you're sort of terrified because everything's falling apart and you're worried things are going to go away. Now, only a tiny percent of people are actually in that paranoid category, maybe 1% of companies. And on the other end, maybe 10% are in the category where things are actually seeming like it's a disaster. And then the rest are doing well. Now, the interesting part is the disaster group actually does phenomenally well. We were working with Domino's Pizza about a decade ago. At the time, their stock price was way down. Now it's up something like 50 times higher because they started doing everything. Drone delivery, delivery by an emoji, delivery where there's an app you can press on Domino's Pizza where you have no options and it just sends a pizza to your house if you don't close the app on time. So what's interesting is imagine walking into the room at Domino's Pizza a decade ago and someone had to say, hey, I think you should be able to order pizza with an emoji. Everyone in the room is probably asking, what is an emoji?
Correct.
And yet they decided to do it. If you're in the group of companies that's doing well, I'm sorry, but they're just not going to listen to your idea of delivering a pizza with an emoji. Right. So I think that what's interesting is if your company's paranoid, great. If it's a disaster, kind of great, because there's opportunity in that. But in that middle giant group of people thinking that everything's going well, that's when you have all your blind spots on and you miss out on all these awkward little ideas that turn out to be great.
Can you really plan? I mean, you just help educate me because I don't know a lot about this kind of trendy stuff, this future stuff. Can you plan for some of that, or are people stumbling on it?
There's a lot of tactics for how you can figure this out. And the issue is breaking from the path, recognizing that your blind spots are on. So how do we get you to look at your problem from a different perspective?
Right.
So even simple example workshops that I put in the book would be, Just take your business and imagine that Amazon decided to come after it. Well, Amazon wouldn't. Well, that's what the grocery stores thought too. But then now they're dealing with Amazon. But what about Facebook? What if Facebook wasn't allowed to have ads anymore and they had to get into products and services and they decided to pick your industry as a test? And then what about Google? What about Patagonia, who thinks everyone's destroying the world and we need to be more sustainable? How would they approach it? And you can pick awkward companies from all different examples and just think about how would they approach your market. Now, that's an example technique where you're just trying to look at your problem from different perspectives. And when you finish it, you start seeing where you're strong and where you're weak. A different example would be you can imagine with the group of people from your organization, what do you think would cause us to get disrupted 5 years from now? If 5 years from now our company fell apart, what do you think realistically would lead to it? Not like outer space or something that's out of your control, but what would lead to it? Is it not getting digital, not attracting the next gen of customers? What would it be? And the point would be when you go through little simulations like this, on one hand, you look at your problem from other perspectives and you might figure something out. But on the other hand, you're building your myelin and you're actually getting better at training your brain to see problems from multiple perspectives. And the reality is that innovation isn't fluffy, it's science. And there's all sorts of tactics that you can do to dramatically increase your performance and to extract better thinking from your brain.
So when you're working with companies, are you working with them to try to help them use these tactics to benefit their companies? Are you walking them through many of these tactics and strategies?
Yeah, so it's effectively how do you make innovation and change actually happen? So as an example, people will say, oh, if you want change to happen, you need to tolerate failure. Okay, but what does that mean? I don't want to be the one that fails. Maybe the guy in the other team can fail, but what does that mean? So what are the actual tactics? So some of the ones in the book on that example would be our head of innovation client at Adidas will host a project funeral for you to celebrate the idea you tried that didn't work. Puts it to rest, celebrates the effort, make sure you don't feel bad and cross the street to Nike. Our client who runs innovation at Staples will give you a written permission slip to fail, which means we know this is a higher risk project, but we all got your back on it and you still get a bonus at the end of the year. At the BBC, they have a gambling fund. And if your regular idea qualification process fails something out, it can still qualify for gambling fund money. And an example of a TV show that failed but got the gambling money, The Office, which went on to become their biggest international hit. I think the thing is that in this time period we're in, people get that innovation and disruption are a thing. But I think that the next era, the next 5 or 10 years, will be people putting a little more effort into the tactics and the tools to actually make all of that happen. And I hope that this new book and our work as a company is a step towards that direction.
That's right. By the way, how would people find you? We'll put a link down at the bottom. How would they find you?
You can get Create the Future pretty much anywhere that books are sold. But if you go to createthefuturebook.com, then we'll have all the extra little goodies and videos and trend reports that you get for free as part of getting it. Yeah.
Perfect. So here you have what you just spoke on are the tactics and methods for defining choices. And I love this. Number 1, identify your comfort zone. And you just spoke to some of this. Number 2, respect out of comfort zone decisions. Number 3, have a gambling fund. Number 4, solicit outside opinions. And number 5, make bold choices. I love that. Those are just great reminders for every team leader that wants to get ahead, right? And then to ask questions, be humble, recognize your level of expertise versus someone else's level of expertise and see what makes sense. You talk about instant entrepreneurship. Talk about that for a second, because I'm thinking of what one craze right now, it seems, are setting up Shopify accounts. Sure. And anyone can, on Instagram, on Shopify, open a store and then sell on Instagram like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you rewound a decade or 2 decades ago and you wanted to start a store and sell something, I don't know, there's a lot of steps in that. But instant entrepreneurship is one of the mega trends that we track at Trend Hunter, where you can more instantly become an entrepreneur more easily than ever before, or within a company. You could test and try something in a brand new market. My little 9-year-old niece could decide she wants to make dinosaur figurines. She could go to Thingiverse and have someone make a 3D printed model for her. She could go to Wix and automatically design her website in 20 minutes for free.
Right.
She could get a logo designed at 99designs.com by people competing globally and have her Kickstarter up all in the period of an afternoon. So you can more instantly become an entrepreneur. And a stat I like is that if you multiplied together and you looked at the number of English speaking, internet connected, literate people, and you compare now versus 2000, it's 15 times more. So your global competition, your global customers, your global collaborators, however you want to look at it, that's changed dramatically. And there's just so many tools out there to try and explore new things. So that's instant entrepreneurship.
No, that's awesome. What do you see as the most potentially disruptive technology in the coming decade? Do you have any research on that?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence for sure. And people hear the word AI and it sounds like it's a little bit too techy. So in the book, I did put a little appendix section where I break down what it means when you start combining it with other categories, like how you interface robotics, 3D printing, and even sustainability, which seems like a curveball. But the simpler way to think about AI is that we're able to dramatically accelerate things with technology now and in the future. And oddly, we only call something AI when it's brand new. But your Google newsfeed, your Facebook friend stream, your Tinder swiping, all of that's been automated through AI for the last 5 years or more. So I think that what's interesting is that humans have already been in a position where we underestimate the pace of technological change and we overestimate how much we think we'll personally accomplish. But that difference is about to become magnified now that every tech innovation is going to start happening at a much faster rate. So I think it's important to understand that so that you know how to make the decisions in your own life and sort of better project out your future.
Okay, so I have a son in college right now, and I have more children that will be going into college. What do you see as the most likely demand for jobs in the next generation of workers? Has Trent Hunter's done any research on that?
Of course, I think the ability to adapt and change and be a flexible human being is a pretty big advantage, which is to say, even if you thought of something like coding, well, it's going to change. Almost everything's about to keep changing. And the jobs that will exist in 5 to 10 years simply won't exist anymore. And so when you look at something like change or adapting, it's not really a field that's traditionally been out there. And yet there's so much demand for that kind of flexibility in the workforce, even today, but especially tomorrow. So if I was coaching, your kids and giving them some advice, it'd be trying to prepare yourself for a world that's perpetually adapting. And a decade ago, I think people were only preparing to say, oh, the world will move faster. But it's very different to say, no, the world's now in perpetual state of accelerating change, because that now means the thing you want to do is be that worker who's the most flexible, able to try new things, think strategically.
Okay, love it. All right, we got to prepare for acceleration. We're already in it, right? And we're only scratching the surface is what I'm hearing from you. And it's just going to go, 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 go. So adaptability, that is huge. In fact, I saw on the news today with this whole coronavirus, I saw that just those that do well being confined during this process of figuring out where they're at and if they've been infected or not are those that are quickly adaptable. And I think that's just a life skill to have. We do those things that are comfortable. That's normal. But be adaptable when you're pushed outside your comfort zone, because something great could happen there. I mean, when I wrote my first book in 2004, my back was against the wall. What I was doing was not working. I was hitting my head against the wall, and I was forced, because I didn't have an office space, to write my first book in the backseat of a car. From that shift, it catapulted the next 20 years of my business. Well, 15 years of my business. And so I just think, be open to change, trust the process, but be actively engaged and be willing to adapt, I think is all really good stuff to be sharing. All right. Any last thoughts that you would like to share? I encourage people to get the book because, like you talked about, there's a lot of belief building examples in here to get you to think outside of your comfort zone and to think about, and that do you end every chapter? I went through the whole book, but do you end every chapter with tactics?
Yeah, tactics and some workshop questions to get you to your next level.
Yeah, it's really great. And what's really cool is I cannot believe all the graphics and the pictures and the studies. I mean, it's a visual book. And I can't believe
I wanted to adapt to the changing reading habits of today. And so that led to a slightly different structure. And I just wanted to make something that felt like a handbook, engaging, but a lot of provocative thinking throughout. But at the root of it, it all comes down to these stories that are captivating or exciting, or little examples that you can do in your head where you prove yourself right or wrong by how these different neurological traps impact you, but all with engaging stories and then some battle-tested tactics at the end. And I think my final words or thoughts on it would be that you're definitely capable of more than you think. There's so many paths in life that you could be on, but we get caught in the path that we're currently in. And there are so many reinforcing things that keep us there. 7 different traps of path dependency. And yet there's all sorts of simple tactics and techniques you can do that would open up your eyes to your true potential.
Oh, love it. Jeremy, okay, remind the audience, how can they get your book? Where can they go to get it? And where can they contact you? Go ahead.
It's Create the Future, Tactics for Disruptive Thinking. You can get it at Amazon or bookstores anywhere. And if you go to createthefuturebook.com, then you can get some of the extra goodies, including some of my keynote videos and some of our frameworks and trend reports.
Awesome. Well, it's been really great, thought-provoking to have you on the Unleash Your Greatness Within podcast. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for the invite. Appreciate it.
You bet.